Before YouTube took over the world, if you wanted to watch videos about racing, drifting, or even building cars, we had no choice but to watch broadcast television. Here in the United States, back in the early 2000s, shows like Pimp My Ride, Overhaulin', Monster Garage, Hot Rod TV, and American Hot Rod were very, very popular in this space. And why not? They were very well produced and I enjoyed them immensely. Well, except for Pimp My Ride, which has pretty much become a joke. Pimp My Ride was clearly catering to 12-year-olds who thought it would be hella cool to have a disco ball and a popcorn machine in the back of their 1980 Dodge Colt. But there were many great automotive TV shows, and there was a show for almost any type of car fan. And after the release of Fast and Furious in 2001, it seemed like the floodgates opened on new car shows. They were coming out of the woodworks. Shows like Unique Whips pretty much focused on the buyers of the bling style kind of thing, while shows like American Hot Rod focused more or less on the craftsmanship that goes into hand-built cars. For every one show that made it to television, there were dozens that didn't. And somehow, because of my involvement with the production of the Fast and Furious, I received a handful of interesting offers to help create some of these TV shows. And so we put together a lot of proposals and took them to the proper people in Hollywood. The first show that we pitched was called the Ultimate Streetcar Challenge. Does that sound familiar? I'll get to that in a minute. Although I love playing with cars, I actually have other hobbies, believe it or not. Building models has been a hobby of mine since I was 10 years old. I still build models today, focusing mostly on World War II ships, but some of these models take me more than 120 hours to build. And frankly, I find that I don't have that much time to dedicate to building my fleet anymore. So I was thrilled when I learned about this new company called UGears. UGears makes wooden puzzles that are similar to models, but they can be assembled without glue and without special tools. Most puzzles can be built in 3 to 15 hours, which is less than a weekend. There are over 100 different models from which you can choose, including cars, trains, a fully functional clock, and even a musical instrument. UGears models are a great gift for adults who enjoy doing things with their own hands. Assembling these puzzles is fun and challenging, and I feel a great sense of pride when I finish one and it actually looks like the picture. So if you're into puzzles, building models, or just like to tinker or create things with your hands, you really need to check out UGears. They're just so much more fun than conventional puzzles. You can use the link below to browse through more than 100 different puzzles. You can also use the link in my video description to unlock a special discount offer. Order soon if you want to get them before Christmas though. We actually pitched this show directly to Universal Pictures. I was part of a team that consisted of Neil Patel from Cabana Group, Barry Rosenbush, and other people, and both of those guys had 15 plus years of producing credits, so we went in with a lot of clout. The show concept we presented also incorporated opportunities to support the pending release of Too Fast, Too Furious, which had completed production but it was coming out. The premise of the show was to take 4 top car clubs and have them build a car, focusing on improving the car's performance and aesthetics over the course of 6 episodes. But Ultimate Streetcar Challenge did not get selected because, according to Universal, the automotive TV show segment was already very crowded with a bunch of really good programs. Hopefully they weren't including Pimp My Ride in that assessment. Undeterred, we revamped the idea and packaged it as a show that we called Streetcar Showdown. This one featured 8 teams, 8 cars, and covered 13 weeks. This one was way more elaborate. Each team was going to be provided a car to modify. The cars we picked to modify were an RX-7, a Mark IV Supra, can you imagine they're doing that today? A Subaru WRX, and a 4.6 liter V8 Mustang. Oh boy, there would have been a lot of hate with that. Each team was to be provided $15,000 to build their car. They would be judged on their car's improvement to their quarter-mile time and other things like their best lap time, their best slalom performance, and so on. There was a car show element to this program as well. This is where the contestants' cars would be judged by a panel of expert judges. If this sounds familiar, it should, because another group had the same idea and produced it a couple of years later. But my friend RJ DeVera got to be a co-host on that show, so I was at least glad that the show got made and that he was a part of it. The next show opportunity that we pitched was a proposal that we presented actually to EA Games. I had done some consulting work for EA Games late in 2002 for their Need for Speed Underground. EA Games actually flew me up to Vancouver to work in their studio to consult on the accuracy of physics in their pending release of Need for Speed Underground. So that's how I developed a relationship with these folks. From that meeting, my partner Neil Chin and I were asked to build a real-life example of the R34 GTR for the cover of the video game. So our relationship got even tighter with these folks. And while all this was going on, my producer partner got us a meeting with the bigwigs at Lionsgate Production. This was the perfect idea to pitch to the EA Games. So we pitched our tuner challenge concept to EA Games and they loved it. The show was going to be called Need for Speed, to tie in with the release of Need for Speed Underground. It was a more elaborate version of the concept and included one key thing. We were going to include video game challenges as part of the competition. How is that going to work? Let me explain. The challenges consisted of, first, a lap time challenge, best in show, a judge car show with industry experts as judges, and an online element where people can vote, which I hate popular choice, but that's what they wanted. Fastest mechanic in the West, the fastest install of a turbo or nitrous system wins. That would have been fun to watch. Gone in 60 Seconds was another segment. It was a 1-minute free-for-all inside of a performance shop where users or contestants could fill their shopping carts with parts for the car they're building, and we pay for it. A sound competition. Stereo systems will be judged for sound and for show worthiness, which honestly, that was probably going to be a bad idea. And there was going to be a legit drag race at Los Angeles County Raceway or Pomona. There was also going to be an RC car challenge. Each team will pick one RC car driver and have them drive a car that looks like one of the cars in Need for Speed Underground. So there was an element of Need for Speed and everything. And the grand finale was to be one race between the last two teams, winner take all, but with a fun twist. So here's what we put together. The contestants would walk into a giant warehouse and they would see the R34 GTR that we built for Need for Speed Underground. And we tell the contestants that they have to pick a team member to set some lap times on the track. But just as they're about to get into the car, a curtain is pulled back and the drivers suddenly learn that they're going to drive the R34 in the video game, not in real life. They'd be all excited to get in the car. There's no real car. And this basically is going to be a video game challenge where each team puts their best video game driver up against the others, and the winner takes all. The H-show proposal was budgeted for $6.5 million, and that would have made this among the most expensive shows of its time when comparing formats. Like all the ones that had gone before it, we just couldn't get any of these programs into production. It was a very complicated time. And of course, by this time, there were so many car-based programs on so many different channels on television that even MTV couldn't make any of these shows work. In fact, we were actually in talks with MTV at one time on a very similar concept, but they told us straight up that they might just dabble in the car program themselves so they can own everything. And they were also concerned that they didn't think there was enough meat on the bone to build a whole series around it. And ultimately, they did build a series around it, and it lasted for a while. But as TV shows started giving way to videos on YouTube around 2006 or 7, the space got even more crowded. My last hurrah of trying to get a TV show on TV was called Redline TV, and this one it actually got made. At the time, I was the global marketing director for MagnaFlow Performance Exhaust. I wanted MagnaFlow to get into the tuner market in a big way. I convinced them to start with titanium exhaust systems for key tuner cars and to shift some of our marketing dollars into advertising in the tuner segment, and they agreed. And so what we came up with something called Redline TV. To get exposure and give MagnaFlow more credibility in the tuner scene, I argued that we should create our own TV series and we could be the main sponsor. They went for it, and with the help of a company called Schiefer Meteor, we got it pushed through. As I mentioned earlier, it was called Redline TV, and it's still available on Motor Trend TV and Amazon Prime. So just type in Redline TV. The very first episode features my blue wide-body BMW M3 inside MagnaFlow's tech facility and us driving around and going to the International Auto Salon. I had asked tuner model Courtney Day to be our on-air talent, and apparently she did well at the audition, so she was hired and she hosted most of the series. The show covered everything that we would want to watch, right? Only the import tuner scene, and if you really want to see what the tuner market heydays look like, you really need to go back and watch these shows. These shows were filmed at famous tuner shops of the day, including Motorex, remember Motorex? Veilside USA, Apex Integration, Sparco USA, and many others. The series covered import drag racing, US drifting, Japanese drifting, and even JGTC, which had just changed its name to Super GT. The show lasted for 3 seasons, but by 2007, the tuner market was changing in the United States in a big way. Interest in Japanese tuner cars started to dry up, and with 2 drift series and 3 import drag racing series that were still competing for sponsor dollars, there just wasn't enough room to do all of these things for companies. Tuner magazines were also starting to struggle and survive about this time, and there were so many TV shows competing for the audience's attention and sponsor dollars that there just wasn't enough pieces in the pie to distribute to everybody. The last straw was that MagnaFlow abandoned the titanium exhaust line and reduced their focus on the tuner market, realizing that most tuners want Japanese exhaust systems and they're not going to buy that USA stuff, which is a shame. But honestly, you'll never see a better collection of footage of that period, so you really owe it to yourself to check it out. But none of the import-focused TV shows that made it to the air lasted very long anyways. Even as early as 2005, drifting was the big thing, and other than car build shows and programs aimed at preteens like Pimp My Ride, there was just no room in the space for this. And in 2007, YouTube was ramping up rapidly. In the years following, YouTube created a home for automotive videos, and a lot of people started migrating there. Since then, thousands of automotive channels have popped up, and for the relatively few TV shows that still exist that are on Amazon or Prime TV's channel, both required paid subscriptions. So you can watch this stuff for free on YouTube, or you can pay to have Prime or Motor Trim. As for video games, there are more now than ever before, and the top ones still exist: Gran Turismo, Forza, Need for Speed, and I guess technically speaking, Grand Theft Auto. All of these franchises have existed for 20 years or more. This is why I and my producer partners felt that a TV show that integrated a video game component would be a hit, especially back then, but it wasn't to be. Frankly, we would have preferred to work with Universal, but they didn't have a Fast and Furious video game except for that arcade game that still exists today, mostly unchanged actually. Why didn't Universal make a video game? That's a really good question. The story I heard is that they looked into it, but there was too much competition in the space to justify spending tens of millions of dollars to develop one of their own video games and then have to compete in that space with no other video game properties. It just didn't make financial sense. In their eyes, it was better to get licensing dollars from the integration of these cars in other video games that still exist today, rather than compete in the video game world with established developers who are just basically killing it for 20 years. In the end, the relatively few tuner-focused shows that actually made it to the airways just didn't last long. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody, but please don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified each time I drop a new video. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.